Hello and welcome to Griddy Films. This video is going to be a deviation from my normal movie reviews. Today I'm going to talk about some entertainment news that just came out that I found interesting and wanted to talk about. So it's just announced that Quentin Tarantino is in talks with J.J. Abrams to make a Star Trek movie. Quentin Tarantino approached J.J. Abrams with a story idea, and J.J. Abrams liked it, took it to Paramount. It sounds like it's a go, and now they're going to assemble a writer's room to write the story. So what this means is the script is not going to be penned by either J.J. Abrams or Quentin Tarantino, but Quentin Tarantino will get a story by credit. Even though Tarantino won't be penning the script, it looks like there's a possibility that he will direct the movie. So with that explanation of what exactly is going on, let me explain why I'm completely on board with this seemingly weird choice. First of all, Tarantino is a master of genre, and I think his fascination with genre is really going to help with something like Star Trek, particularly because with the J.J. Abrams movies, it never quite captured the heart of Star Trek to me. They've pretty much all so far felt very much like action movies that happen to be Star Trek movies, and I think with Tarantino having some influence, either just with the story or hopefully with story and directing, he'll be able to really take some of the sci-fi elements, particularly sci-fi elements from the original, which is much different from more modern sci-fi tropes. The original series was really a Western in space. I mean, it was the final frontier. It was all about adventuring, going farther west, so to speak, than anyone had ever been before. And I think that Tarantino will really be able to pick up on a lot of those tropes that were used in the original that have been kind of lost, even in like Star Trek Next Generation, which is definitely more evolved as far as genre goes, which is important. You want to keep with the evolution of the genre, but also pay tribute to what came before. And I really think Tarantino has an eye for it, and I think if anyone can do it, yeah, he's a good choice. In addition to his eye for genre, Tarantino is a Star Trek fan. J.J. Abrams was very open when he first started this that I think he said he had never seen a single episode of any Star Trek show, something ridiculous like that. So I think he came in with the idea that he could give a fresh perspective to the franchise because he had never seen it before, which I get, and I think to some extent he was successful in that, but again, it felt very much like an adventure movie that happened to be Star Trek, which I think is because it's lacking the heart of a fan. I really think that fandom is important, and I think that with Tarantino growing up watching and studying the way a future filmmaker would the original Star Trek show, he's going to know those characters, he's going to know the type of adventures they should go on. I think he's going to be able to bring a certain essence to a Star Trek movie that J.J. Abrams isn't able to because he's not a fan. So I think that could be really exciting too. Quentin Tarantino also, throughout all of his movies, has a really sharp focus on characters. And I think that is also something that the Star Trek movies could really use. If the story revolves around the characters first and plot second, I think we're going to get a much stronger, particularly for fans, a much stronger Star Trek movie than what we've seen so far. And I think this is going to be particularly exciting because, with J.J. Abrams, he was able to breathe new life into the franchise in that suddenly Star Trek is for the masses. People who wouldn't normally like Star Trek went to see Star Trek either because they like action movies, they like J.J. Abrams, whatever the case may be. I do think that was an important starting point for a reboot, but now that everything is established, now that there's a both new and old fan base, I think having somebody like Tarantino come in and really hone in on the characters that people love from the original series, people love from the Abrams movies. I mean, these characters are so iconic and so almost universally known and just so recognizable. So I think a Tarantino-helmed Star Trek movie can actually be really exciting for Trekkies who know and love these characters so much and who want to see a Star Trek movie that focuses on these characters as opposed to focusing on action. And we also know with Tarantino, he can direct action. Obviously, he's known for the gratuitous violence, but that doesn't mean he's not capable of making an action scene that's PG-13, that's true to the Trek universe. I think he absolutely is. You know, he's a fan. I think he's going to want to be true to the franchise and true to the characters. And I think we could get a really interesting story. And I think it's important to note also that Tarantino is just a really talented filmmaker. I mean, yes, he's known for gratuitous violence and obscene language, but that doesn't mean he's not capable of making something that doesn't have those. You know, he's here to make a Star Trek movie, and I think we could end up with not just a character-driven, true to Trek movie, but I think it would also be just visually appealing and well-made. It's also interesting to note that this isn't going to be the first time J.J. Abrams has worked with Quentin Tarantino. He actually starred in 4 episodes of Alias. He didn't write or direct any of those episodes, but he did act in them. You know, it's just kind of something to keep in mind that you know, J.J. Abrams has a little bit of an idea of what he's getting into because he's worked with him before. And just on one last quick note, if you're still not too sure about Quentin Tarantino working on a Star Trek movie, I highly suggest you check out the 1965 Mario Bava movie, The Planet of the Vampires. If you don't know anything about Mario Bava, he was really a prolific Italian filmmaker in like the 60s and 70s, but he was extremely influential. Another reason to watch Planet of the Vampires is that it inspired Ridley Scott when he made Alien, which is a fun little tidbit, but a lot of other filmmakers, including Quentin Tarantino, were extremely influenced by the films of Mario Bava. And with Planet of the Vampires, the first time I saw it, it very much felt to me like an episode of Star Trek, the original series, directed by Quentin Tarantino. So what do you think about Tarantino working on a Trek movie? Do you think he should just get the story by credit? Do you think he should direct? Do you think this was just a mistake? Should he not do either? Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything I've said here, if there's anything I've missed, anything I've forgotten. Yeah, I'm curious to know what everybody else thinks about this groundbreaking Star Trek news. Alright, so here's the situation. I filmed what I said earlier on Wednesday. By Thursday, news had already been released that Tarantino's Star Trek movie is going to be rated R. I am back to being a little bit more nervous about this. I also think with the R rating, it's a little bit unfortunate because I think for Star Trek, for so many people, it has a certain power to it to shape young minds, I guess, and just to form optimism and a sense of unity within humanity that I think is lacking in today's world. By its very nature of having an R rating, you're going to limit the number of young people that will see it. That might be a reason to, you know, not do an R rating with this particular franchise. I know with superhero movies, there's a lot of, you know, talk right now after Deadpool and after Logan that we should be pushing the superhero genre into more adult areas, which I think is great. I think that genre, you know, it's not just for kids. I think people are starting to realize that now, which is really great. And Star Trek isn't just for kids either, but I do think it's a little bit unfortunate to limit young people's exposure to something that can have a lot of power for young people. So I was a little bit disappointed by that. However, I do think if he takes on maybe like a war with the Federation, which could be any number of things. You know, there's a lot of battles throughout the series, and if he just took a realistic approach to these battles, that would easily garnish it an R rating and would still be true to the franchise. So he could be going in that direction. So he has mentioned in previous interviews, well before this was announced, that he's interested in kind of the time travel aspects of Star Trek and alternate timelines. I think it's possible we could see, you know, maybe something of a different era, maybe even a new cast altogether. We could even see, I mean, if he's talking alternate timelines, we could even see maybe alternate universe. Maybe we'll get some mirror stuff. That could be pretty cool. So, I mean, who knows what we're going to get. It really depends on why it's going to be rated R. I'm assuming at this point it's going to be primarily for violence. So if the violence is used effectively to tell a story that is true to Star Trek, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I am back to being nervous. So time will tell. Let me know your thoughts, and we'll see how else the story develops. Alright, so in part 3 of what is now becoming quite the epic tale of the proposed Tarantino Star Trek movie, it has now been announced that none other than Captain Jean-Luc Picard himself, Patrick Stewart, is interested in participating. So this lends a little bit more credence to my idea that this might not be an original series story. or if it is, that there's going to be some sort of time travel involved. Which could be interesting. And I think having Patrick Stewart so openly say this early on in the game that, pretty much if he's asked, he will participate, is kind of the vibe that I got. And that definitely gives me a little bit more confidence. Obviously, there's no script yet. He hasn't seen what he's basically agreeing to. But I think this could be a boost of confidence to a lot of fans, and I think it could be a sign that we're moving away from the original series and into next gen, at least as far as time frame goes. This does make me a little bit nervous, first of all because I'm not necessarily sure I want to see the next gen cast in another movie. Part of me does, and part of me thinks it could go wrong very quickly. And it also makes me a little bit nervous because it makes me think they could be rebooting next gen. I really hope they're not going that route, and this is all speculation at this point, but the idea of it taking place in a time frame one way or another where Jean-Luc Picard exists can get a little bit iffy. They can go a lot of different directions with it, so that leaves a big question of what does this mean, and it might not mean anything, because Quentin Tarantino hasn't weighed in on this. This is just Patrick Stewart said in an interview, this intrigues me, I think he's talented, I really want to work with him, I would come back to be in a movie that he's directing. So that's all it is at this point. But I think that combined with Tarantino's past interviews about his ideas for what he could do with the Star Trek movie, it does beg a question of where is this movie, like where in time is this movie going to take place? And that's kind of where we are right now with this story. Hopefully no more news comes out before I can finally post this. Hey, thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and if you like what you saw, be sure to subscribe to Griddy Films on YouTube and like and share this video. You can also follow Griddy Films on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you'd like to learn more about the Griddy Films grid rating system, you can check out the Griddy Films website, and if you'd like to learn how you can support Griddy Films, you can check out the Griddy Films Patreon page. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.